Well, hey everyone. Let me know if you all can hear me. It has been quite a while since I have done one of these. So, super excited to be here. If you could just drop a comment saying, hey, this is working. You who have not streamed in a long time. Dr. DeClue. Good to hear you or good to see your comment, and thank you so much for the congratulations. And to all of you who have dropped congratulatory messages, Corey, thanks for the loud and clear. As I was saying, it's been a while since I've done this, so it's really good to get back to it. In fact, I was looking over the history of the channel, and it has been over a year since I last did a live stream, which if you guys enjoy this today, if you'd like more videos in a live format, more Q&As, do let me know. Leave comments in the chat. That's the best way to do that. But I am super excited to be here. Now, the occasion for today's stream is hitting 50,000 subscribers, which is kind of crazy to me. And I think I've said that in any conversation I've had about hitting 50,000 subscribers or in any post I've made about it. And I recognize that crazy isn't the most descriptive of adjectives, but it truly is hard to wrap my mind around the sheer scale of the channel. And that's not to say that there aren't much larger channels, and that's not to say that it won't continue growing, which is crazy to think about as well. But it's really just to say that I recognize that this channel has grown far beyond my wildest dreams and far beyond my own personal capacities. I was in a conversation talking about humility, actually, after the video with Dr. Ortland, and how there's kind of this journey of growing a platform where at some point you start growing and maybe you're tempted to think, like I'm getting kind of good at this. Maybe I'm getting the hang of it. And then it keeps growing, and you just recognize that it is so detached from your own personal ability that there's such an interesting mixture of luck, of providence, of whatever things you want to throw in the blender to make a growing YouTube channel. But the biggest thing that I want to just attribute the growth to is to all of you. I am so grateful to all of you who watch these videos, who share them with your friends, who have commented, who have sent me nice messages, and especially to my patrons who give to keep this channel going and growing. If it wasn't for them, there wouldn't be a light there. I wouldn't have the software to stream for this, the setup and everything. But even more than that, to be able to take the time to invest in the channel. And to all of them, I am so grateful. Just a real short plug for patrons. We get to do lots of fun things as patrons. Not only do you get just more access to talking to me and the Discord server and all of those things, but there is a patron book club. And right now we're going through On Social Justice by Saint Basil, which has been so impactful on me already. And I'm going to talk a bit more about the book club in a second because it relates to one of the questions. But real quick, I just want to say thanks to everyone dropping in the... someone said a bit louder. Let me know if this gets better. I'm going to turn it up just slightly. But thanks everyone for the feedback, for the questions. I will be taking live questions, and I will start, however, with some questions from my patrons because, well, I have to. They are so generous, and I want to repay that in any way I can. So just 2 questions from the patrons. They ask me questions fairly often, so this is a bit less of an occasion for them. But one asked a really interesting question. This comes from someone named Michael. He asked, I bet you've been asked which Catholic Orthodox doctrine you struggle with the most. So to flip the script, what is one aspect or doctrine you struggle with in the Protestant camp? Which is a really interesting question, and I find it really fascinating. Because I haven't been asked that question, and though I typed out or copy and pasted the response, I didn't want to formulate a response ahead of time because I did want it to be off the cuff, just like all of my other answers. So the Protestant doctrine I struggle the most with is a difficult question because it's hard to pin down Protestant doctrines, and maybe that's partially could be one answer. One way of describing this is that one of the struggles is that there's not a lot of uniformity. For instance, I could say that I have issues with TULIP, which is the famous acronym for Calvinism, but I'm not a Calvinist, and Protestants aren't required to be Calvinists, so I don't know if that actually answers your question. And there are many kind of third order doctrines within Protestantism that I'd say I disagree with, but I can still be a Protestant and disagree with those. So I think the question's getting at something a bit more fundamental to Protestantism. And on that level, I would say Sola Scriptura is probably one. Not that I would say I actively disagree with it, but I would say that Sola Scriptura really is a battleground doctrine, and in many ways of presenting Sola Scriptura, I think there's holes in it. Now, I think you can form a more coherent vision of Sola Scriptura, but in kind of the pop apologetic level, I do think it can be a problematic doctrine. I don't want to ramble on this for too long, and if you guys have follow-up questions, I'd be open to looking at that. But that would be my answer, Michael G. The short answer, which Protestant doctrine do I struggle the most with? I would say Sola Scriptura. Another question comes from a certain Gavin, who has been on my channel 6 times. He is that generous that he is a patron of my channel. And he asked this wonderful question of what are the things you've seen in your YouTube career that have been the most encouraging to you regarding ecumenical relations? This question really made me think, because that is what the channel is all about, and it's easy to fixate on negatives. It's this dynamic that I think many of us will be able to recognize, whether you're on YouTube or whether just in any aspect of life. Oftentimes, the negative contrarian voices tend to drown out the positive ones. You can do 9 great things and one person tells you is bad, and you tend to remember that. It's the same way in comments. I get all of these lovely comments from people like you watching the stream right now, I'm sure. But then you get, those ones that are divisive and are unfair oftentimes to guests, in my opinion. And those tend to stand out. And so I appreciate that this question forced me to think about all of the wonderful, good things that come from this channel, because there really are so many. So my answer to what has been the most encouraging thing to me regarding ecumenical relations, and I swear this isn't a plug, but it has been the book club that I do with my patrons. This isn't to say become a patron and become a part of the book club. I'd love to have you. But the reason it's so encouraging to me is that for months at a time, people get together from all different backgrounds from across the world. For instance, in our last one, we had someone in Japan, someone in Mexico, someone in Ukraine, people in pretty much all of the US time zones, coming from Catholic, Orthodox, and Protestant backgrounds. And we're all just getting together to talk about patristic texts. And we're doing it in a way there has been so little arguments. Not to say that there's not disagreement, but it's been so charitable and everyone's seeking to grow and learn. Honestly, that's been the pinnacle of my YouTube career. I've gotten to do a lot of cool things, right? I've gotten to interview a lot of amazing people, brilliant people. I've gotten to go to beautiful places, and all of that has been amazing. But it's really hard to beat those group conversations of seeing people come together and ask, how can we care for the poor more as we go through St. Basil, or in the last one, how do we make sense of the person of Christ when we talked about St. Maximus the Confessor? So I hope that doesn't sound like a plug, but it really has been one of the most encouraging. If I had to pick a series of videos that have been the most encouraging, and I wouldn't say this just because this person was involved in them, but I would say it would be the dialogues. Specifically, I think the dialogue between Gavin Ortland and Brett Sockold on the Eucharist was really a high point. Just the way that the two of them communicated, the way that they sought common ground, sought to understand even amidst their differences. To me, that was one of my favorites that I've gotten to do. All right. Lots of questions coming in. I also pulled some questions just from the community page where people asked questions ahead of time, but I want to get to some of the live ones here. Casual sip of water out of our very fancy mason jar cups, because that's what it's like 6 months after being married. I love it. I love it. We're not very fancy. All right, scrolling through for questions. Thanks for everyone for the nice things. Northern Waters asks, have you ever read The Unseen Realm by Michael Heiser? I actually have not, which I know it's a wildly popular book, and I've had him on the channel, but it wasn't for that book. I do read people's books before I interview them, but I interviewed him on his book on demons, which is the only Michael Heiser book I've read. However, I've heard so many people say that The Unseen Realm is incredible, life-changing, changed the way they saw the world, and that's amazing. I just haven't gotten around to it for no particular reason other than time. All right. Corey said, your channel inspired me to explore Christian traditions different than my own. For example, attending a... Oh, there's another comment. Can we get them both on the screen? Look at that. Novus Ordo Mass and a Divine Liturgy. Soon to attend a TLM. Corey, that's amazing. I'm so glad to hear that. Things like this are also some of my favorite to hear from people. Just that something that they watched, a video online, caused them to do something in person that had some impact on their life. It still blows my mind because to me, I mean, for the longest time, I was just sitting making videos in my dorm room now, sitting making them in a spare bedroom with, mess behind me, but slightly out of frame. And that these videos are having an impact on people and changing them in the real world. It's amazing. So Corey, thanks for sharing that. Okay. Chris Duncan asks, you have been a real inspiration. Thank you, Chris. And have you ever been on a retreat to a monastery? Gethsemane Abbey in Kentucky is really nice. Home of Merton. Thomas Merton, I guess that is. I've been to a monastery. I've been to 2 monasteries. But I haven't been on a retreat to a monastery. So the longest I've been at a monastery was like 24 hours. I spent 24 hours at the monastery in Washington, D.C. It was, and for some reason I can't think of the name of it right now. It was a Benedictine monastery, St. Anselm's in D.C. And I'm actually having one of those monks from the monastery over for dinner in a couple of weeks, which I'm just so excited about. I've never had a monk in my home. We love having people over. And so the other day I got to just ask Eliza, my wife, when we were making dinner, like, hey, honey, how would you feel about having a monk over for dinner on, Friday the 24th or whatever? She just looks at me like, where do you come from? Like, what are these questions? But she said yes. So we're having Brother Ignacio over our house in a couple of weeks, which I'm really excited for. Long answer is they haven't been on a retreat, have been there, and thanks for the kind words. All right. Looking for more questions. Someone, I think this is a suggestion, JW says, it would be awesome if you could have a series comparing different theological schools on predestination and free will. It's an interesting idea. Watch this. Pen, paper, free will series. It's written down. All right, next question. Let's see. Dream theological guest from BR. This is hard. For a long time, it was Tim Mackey of the Bible Project, and I got to have him on, which was a dream. That's the most surreal interview I've gotten to do. Never thought that would happen. Outside of him, I think I'd go with N.T. Wright. He's had a big impact on me. He was one of the people that inspired me to want to study theology, along with Tim Mackey. So I think that would be just a real kind of full circle crazy moment. Also, Bishop Robert Barron would be on that list. A super chat. Oh, Jeff, thank you so much. Here's some money for your ministry. I really appreciate that. That is so kind. Thank you. Not tired of winning. I just have to pull down the screen. Did I choose to write that down, or was it destined? Stay tuned for the series. All right. Oh, someone said, I hope you get more opportunities to invite monks over. Me too. Any monks watching? You want to come over to my house? Like, anytime. Open invite. I think. I should probably run that by Eliza, pending Eliza's approval. Have I ever been to a Liabri? Probably butchered that. Retreat? I have not. Oh, by Francis Schaeffer in Minnesota. No, that's interesting. I wish I would have heard of this while I was in Chicago. It would have been a bit closer. I do want to do some more videos at monasteries. I'm working on an Orthodox monastery video, but just hasn't come to fruition quite yet. Okay. I want to keep looking for questions, and actually, while I do that, I'm going to pivot to some questions that were in here ahead of time that people asked, because I want to make sure to grab some of those. Someone asked, her name was Vanya Vincent, I think. What is your favorite prayer and how do you pray? My favorite prayer would be the Jesus prayer. Was the first repetitive prayer, I guess, outside of the Lord's Prayer that I was taught. And I wasn't taught the Lord's Prayer as something to pray continually or pray repeatedly in that way. And I was introduced to the Jesus prayer via The Way of the Pilgrim, which has been one of the most influential books on my life. It's been absolutely amazing. And that is a prayer that I pray often. So that is my favorite prayer. How do you pray? I would say it's a mixture of written prayers and spontaneous prayers. So like I said, I love the Jesus prayer. I love using prayer beads for that. Also love praying the Divine Liturgy. I haven't done it as much lately. I tend to kind of go through seasons where I will explore different things, just especially when it's repetitive prayers. Not that there's any problem in doing them all the time. The Jesus prayer is more of a constant for me, but with other forms of pre-written prayers, I like to kind of cycle in different things to get different experiences. And in college, the Divine Office was a big one for me. So I'll do that, but then I also pray on my own. I also have kept prayer journals at different times, really just open to doing it in different ways. So yeah, that is that. All right, back to live questions. Scrolling down. Do you follow the BCP? I do not. For those that don't know, that acronym is Book of Common Prayer. And honestly, I don't have one. I'm sure I can get it online for free. That's a pretty lame answer, I know, especially for someone that has a lot of Anglican friends. I really should check it out. Book of Common Prayer. Robert, do you have a favorite edition? Because I know if you're Anglican or if you're just in those circles, I know that's a big thing. Like, which edition of the Book of Common Prayer? So if you've got a favorite, let me know. I'll write it down. All right. I wish you guys could see this. So if you see me looking around, I've got a screen over here and a screen over here. And Jeff, who was so generous to give a super chat, it's now popping up every like 3 seconds on my screen and grabbing my attention. So my computer really wants me to know that Jeff gave a super chat, and this is a fun bug where it's just going to keep telling me that. But I do appreciate it. Katie West says 1928 Book of Common Prayer is the best. I think that Father Wesley Walker, who I just had on the channel, agrees with that. Nutrition Nut. Any Orthodox people that you haven't interviewed that you would like to interview? Yes. So I just messaged I don't want to get his name wrong. An Orthodox. Well, I am blanking on his name. This is so embarrassing. Now he shouldn't ever come on the channel. I don't want to say. Okay, yes, Abbot Tryphon. Abbot Tryphon and I are working on scheduling an interview, and he is someone that I want to have on the channel that I haven't yet, which is why I'm trying to make it possible. There's other Orthodox guests for sure as well, but he's towards the top of the list. Father Spurdian Bailey would be pretty interesting to interview. If anyone has connections with him, let me know. All right. This is great. Northern Water said Eliza is going to feel like Bilbo with all of the dwarves that keep arriving. Yes, if with the open invite to all the monks, which I'm sure there's not any monks watching this, but if there are, and you're all welcome at my apartment, she really will. But the great thing about that is she's reading Lord of the Rings for the first time, guys. Like, how exciting is that? Actually, you can see Lord of the Rings behind me. You'll notice that The Hobbit is missing. So technically she's reading The Hobbit, but she's going to read the rest of them. It's missing because she's reading it. So if you are like if you're someone that is super observant, here's your challenge over the next couple weeks. As I film new videos, keep track of which book of Lord of the Rings is not there anymore, and you'll know what Eliza's reading. So there you go, folks. Thanks, BR, for the super chat and keeping it interesting. Yeah, this is a fun game. This is fun. All right. Oh, Eliza's in the chat. She never watches my videos. If she was listening, though, she might have heard that I just said. So maybe she just has it pulled up. We'll see. This is a fun game to play. Let's see. Interview Father Evan Armadas. Oh, it's Bonnie. Bonnie, it's wonderful to see you. Bonnie is in the Gospel Simplicity Inside Circle book club, and she has great recommendations. So I'm going to take that. Wait, he's your priest, isn't he? Bonnie, let me know if Father Evan Armadas is your priest, because every time you talk about your church. It just sounds wonderful. And so if he is behind that, I want to make that interview happen. Okay. Myron Mercado asks this question, which is a chance as well to answer one of the previous questions that someone asked me. So Myron asks, any chance I'll invite Cameron Bertuzzi on my channel? The answer is yes. I've actually invited Cameron in the past before, and we've just kind of struggled to link up on a date and time. I know he's super busy, and I was busy at the time. So we've traded like 2 emails. That's the extent that I've ever interacted with Cam, and I've been on his live streams, and we've like interacted there. But I would invite him on the channel. I got another question on what are my thoughts on Cameron Bertuzzi's conversion. So I'm going to pull that up now, or not pull it up, but my thoughts on Cameron Bertuzzi's conversion. The first thing I want to say to Cameron is I'm sure that was a lot. As someone that has considered these things and also has a YouTube channel that's centered around this, I can only imagine what a head-spinning experience it was to share that with your channel and then to experience the range of reactions. From the barrage of welcome home videos, from being flown to the Vatican to do an interview about it, to having people make videos about how you were never Christian in the first place or how you're not really Catholic now, people questioning your decisions. I can't imagine what that's like. Or rather, I can say I've actually spent a lot of time imagining what that's like, but you've experienced that. And I have so much just empathy for what that must be like. As far as his decision to convert, it seems like he thought it out well. It seems that it wasn't an easy decision for him, but that he did his due diligence and really sought to weigh the evidence fairly and came to the conclusion that made the most sense to him. And I really respect that. I respect him being willing to go where he felt the truth was leading and to make that decision in a way that is going to have some impact on his ministry and on his life, right? And on his home life, in his family life, and in his vocational life through YouTube. So I respect him following that. I really am hesitant to say a lot more than that. When the news came out that Cameron Bertuzzi had converted to Catholicism, of course, I got a flood of texts from people, and I also got lots of comments from people asking me if I'd make a reaction video. The answer to that is no, and I'm also hesitant to have him on the channel to talk about it. The reason for that is that imagining being in his shoes, it's just not what I would want to do. In the grand scheme of things, I know he has a large platform, and I know some people see this platform as large. I mean, 50,000 blows my mind, but we're all just like really normal people. And it can be a bit disorienting when people make such a big deal out of the decisions or the thoughts or the conclusions that we as YouTubers come to. And personally, I just wouldn't want to put any more weight on him for that. So all I'll say is like, I really wish him well, and I hope it leads him to ever deeper faith in Christ. But I don't want to overanalyze it, and I don't want him to feel like he has to go on a worldwide press tour for it, because all of that just sounds really disorienting, and it's not what I would want. Next question. That was a long answer. Let's see. Oh, someone asked for Eliza to come on screen. She's welcome to. I don't know if she wants to, but Eliza, if you're watching, you are welcome to come on screen. Northern Water says, if you could travel to any country, where would you pick? Also got to know your favorite food. That's really hard. Iceland was at the top of the list, and then we went there for our honeymoon, and it was absolutely amazing. But where would I go now? I have this... probably like Bali, Indonesia. Yeah. Probably like Indonesia... Thailand. So Asia is the only inhabited continent that I haven't been to at this point. So I'd really like to get there. So first Asia. I also really want to go to Norway, and I really want to go to Morocco. Those are all very different choices. But also got to know my favorite food. I don't know that I have a favorite food. Yeah, I don't. I'm gonna go with bread. I've gotten on this bread making kick. In fact, we made sourdough focaccia today, and it was delightful. I'm just gonna turn into one large carb. So bread. I just heard a knock on the door. I bet that's Eliza. Come in. Oh, Eliza's here. Look, I know her.
I just wanted to say, we wanna do a trip to like Scandinavian.
Oh,
countries.
you're coming for that question?
Yep.
All right, Eliza's here for the travel question. Scandinavian. Norway's in Scandinavia.
Right.
Right. Okay. Do you want to say anything else?
Hi.
Hi. Well, thanks so much for joining.
Yeah.
Oh, and can all the monks come to our house for dinner?
Yeah.
It's a yes. If you're a monk watching, you have an open invite. Come for dinner. We'll cook you food. I'll make you sourdough bread. It'll be a grand time. Do you want to answer any more questions? Or you just want to just make a little cameo? Is Bilbo Baggins calling?
No, I was doing some homework.
Oh, all right. We won't keep you from that. Well, thanks for joining.
Yeah.
All right. Eliza, everyone.
All right, bye.
All right, there you have it. That was not planned. Oh, people said, "Woo, Eliza, do we wear the same frame of glasses?" No. Okay, don't think less of me for this, guys. So, the answer is no, but we do have very similar glasses. And she did tell me first that she wanted to get like round glasses, and then I had a doctor's appointment after that. Or eye doctor's appointment, and went and tried on frames, and I was like, ooh, like round glasses, those are a vibe. And so then I got them, and she was like, are you kidding me? And then she got ones that were kind of different, and then she got ones that were kind of similar. So we do have very similar glasses, and it's my fault. I get it if you want to leave the stream now. All right, Myron said thanks. That answer was really a lot more than you expected. Awesome. It's something I've thought about a lot. So someone said party time. Yeah. Party at my house. Our idea of a party is like we read books and make sourdough. So if that's your idea of a party, come party with us. How about a nun? Oops, nun. Yeah, nuns are welcome too. You know, the more the merrier. If you're in our area, let me know. All right. Caroline Ferreira said you loved the interview with Father Andrew about the Lord of the Rings. Have I considered doing some exploring C.S. Lewis work? If I haven't yet. And the answer is I actually have. I did one on the medieval mind of C.S. Lewis. I don't remember his name, but it was a really fun interview, and you should check it out. If someone finds it and puts it in the chat, you get double points. Double points do not carry any monetary value and are pretty much meaningless, but you have my eternal affection. Ooh, any advice for couples exploring the marriage question? It feels kind of presumptuous for me to give advice because we've been married for all of 6 months. We got married on June 3rd. I guess that's 7 months, 8 months. Explore it prayerfully. Marriage this is going to sound cliche, but it's one of the biggest decisions you'll ever make. And so it's something that should be taken seriously, taken prayerfully, but also joyfully. Marriage is my favorite thing of all time. Being married to Eliza is the greatest gift of my life, and I just love it. So I don't know. We've been married for 8 months. I don't want to come across as though a marriage guru. I think we've learned some things along the way, and we have a ton to learn. But prayerfully, seriously, and joyfully. That's how I would explore the marriage question. All right. Oh, Garrett Coyle and Sam. Wow. Okay, 2 super chats. Let's get to those. I haven't read them yet. Kegel says, and Garrett, thank you so much for the super chat. So generous. Really appreciate it. Why do you think you can parse through all Christian traditions and just take what you want? To me, that's just Protestant. In my opinion, Christ set up a church to be submitted to, and that's humility. It's a very fair question. So why do I think I can parse through all Christian traditions and just take what you want? I guess that's not how I would phrase what I see myself doing, but I think that's a fair question. So the first would be a presupposition, I suppose, that truth can be found in a myriad of places, and that truth, regardless of its source, is good. And I think most people would agree with that, right? So if anyone says something that is true, good, and beautiful, I would want to learn from that. But I'm imagining you don't disagree with that. I think the question probably more so is if I'm seeing true things in Catholicism, say, or in Orthodoxy, why just take those things as like a nugget and not take on the tradition wholesale? I think. And if I'm misrepresenting your question, please let me know, Garrett, because I would love to follow up on it. So to me, that's I think the idea is not taking what you want, but taking what you find to be good, true, and beautiful. Now, at some point, you might find that the tradition at a meta level is true, right? Or it is the true expression of the church, in which case you should submit to that church and you should take it all on, even the parts that are difficult and maybe less than beautiful, right? The reason I haven't done that, I suppose, is that I haven't been convinced that the overarching truth claim, the exclusive truth claim of being the one true church for Catholicism or Orthodoxy, I haven't found that to be overly compelling. So that's why I haven't explored it in the way, which I would say is Protestant. So yeah, I hope that's helpful. All right, I see the super chats are rolling in now, so I want to make sure to get to these super chats. Samuel Kamens says, my friend is Christian but very anti-Catholic, citing supposed pagan origins. Any ways to refute? Yeah, I mean, so I would just explore that with him, right? And so I would apply the same questions you would take to any major truth claim. So there might be claims of something like, I don't know, that the Church of Rome is somehow aligned with like the cult of Isis, not like the modern day one, but the ancient variety of the female deity. I mean, so I would just ask like, okay, so on what grounds are we making this claim? And then I would really look for things that are the difference between causation and correlation. So you could say, for instance, that in the cult of Isis, they also had this female that they would ask for intercession. Therefore, you have the Roman Catholics coming up with this idea of praying to Mary. But honestly, that just doesn't hold weight, right? So first you would have to show that it moves from that to that via causation, like this caused that, which is pretty hard to do historically. Or you could just say it's just a coincidence that they're influential females in both of these systems of thought. So I would just explore it with them and ask open-ended questions. I find that to be more productive than just laying out like aggressive arguments, because that puts people in a more defensive mode. It's my argument versus your argument. And if people aren't ready to really think and explore, it's not going to be helpful. But by asking them questions, oftentimes you can show like there's really just not that much substance here, and they can come to that conclusion themselves. That's how I would do it. Of course, I'm not Catholic, and so maybe there's people here that would do that differently, and I would love to know how they would do that. All right, I think there was another question. This isn't a question. Shiba dog dressed in traditional outfit waving Japanese fans. Did YouTube? Oh, I'm dumb. That's funny. Okay, so now I look over here at YouTube and I see that this is YouTube describing a GIF. And so I just read Shiba dog dressed in traditional outfit waving Japanese fans as though that was a normal thing to do, and I am disappointed in myself. Again, everyone feel free to just stop watching at this point. Okay, let's look into questions. And double points for people that are formatting their questions like this with a Q at the beginning. That makes me see that it's a question, and it's very helpful. So Jordan, that is pro level live stream commenting from you. Jordan Knox, what is your interpretation of Genesis 1? Young earth creationism, old earth creationism, theistic evolution, anything else? Love your videos. Keep up the great work. Okay, so I would preface my answer to this question with, I don't think it is a question that the church needs to be divided over. I don't think it's a first order issue. I don't think it's a dogmatic issue. And I think there's plenty of room for freedom of interpretation here, right? And we can all still be in the same churches and coexist happily together. with different views of this. So that's my preface. Personally, I am not a young earth creationist. I just don't find that to be compelling. I think maybe the most interesting arguments for that are around kind of patristic consensus, but I still don't find that to be a compelling way of proving young earth creationism. I'm not a scientist. This also isn't an issue I'm overly well schooled in. I'm willing to have my mind changed on it, but from a scientific perspective, I also just haven't seen anything that convinces me that actually I need to rethink this and to become a young earth creationist. So old earth creationism versus theistic evolution. Again, I would not say that this is a dividing issue between the two. I generally take a more literary approach to Genesis 1 in that it's talking more about what kind of world we live in than the scientific origins of the universe. So that's how I'd answer, my interpretation of it, that it's more of a worldview question, worldview story. But how it came about between old earth creationism and theistic evolution, honestly, I hesitate to give a strong answer there just because it's not an issue that's been overly pressing to me. So I would probably lean towards old earth creationism, but I'm very willing to change my mind on that. Okay, let's look for some questions. Actually, that did remind me of a question I wanted to ask over here. So James C. Smith asked ahead of time, do I believe in sola, or do I believe that sola fide is an essential doctrine? If not, why not? And by essential, he means, do you need it to be saved? So given that definition of what essential means, of you need to believe this in order to be saved, I would not say that sola fide is an essential doctrine. Now, hear me out here before I lose all Protestant credibility. I'm not saying that I don't believe in sola fide, and I'm not saying that it's not a helpful theological doctrine. But I think we want to be careful here with the solas in general, and I'm talking to fellow Protestants here, because the way the solas are formulated and the way we're doing theology, I think, just largely is that they are essential to the system of it helps make a coherent whole. It helps make a coherent systematic theology for Protestantism, largely speaking. But it's not in believing in sola fide that you are saved by faith. So it's not that you are saved by believing in being saved by faith alone, but the doctrine sola fide, properly speaking, is that you are saved by faith alone, not in recognizing this Latin formulation of it. And so even for those that hold very tightly to sola fide, I think you would want to say that sola fide is not necessary for salvation, but faith is. That's my take on it. Next question. Okay, and that might get some strong reactions. I'm not sure. Okay. Nutrition Nut says I should look into Jonathan Pageau's explanation of the creation of the world. I really should. I had him on the channel, and I don't recall if we talked about this, but he was a really fun guest to interview. Really bright guy and bit of a change of pace from my other interviews. So it's one that I would be interested in rewatching. Oh no. Okay, Remington Stewart says I had asked a question, the super sticker bought and sent was like an emoji. You're sad. No, we'll just ask your question again. I'll pull it to the top of the list. Yeah, just put it in there. We'll make it happen. But you got an opportunity to watch me cringe at myself over reading out a GIF. So that was fun. Okay. Someone said without works, faith is dead. That's the Bible's take. Yeah, I would agree with that. We can get into the nuances of sola fide if we want, but Luther would certainly agree with that as well. JW said, you agree with me on the solas. It's not sola solas, LOL. That's a really good way of putting it. Okay, more questions. And I'm just looking over here to see if there's any. Oh, I'll ask this question at some point. So we've got maybe 20-ish minutes left. Someone asked me, if I had to choose between Catholicism and Orthodoxy, which will I pick? I will get to that at the end, but I want to get through some of the other questions. Bonnie Johnstone says, Orthodox would say, in the beginning, God, and not speculate further. It's like a mic drop response there, Bonnie. I like it. All right. Just scrolling down. Now my screen is flashing the written description of Remington Stewart ship a dog dressed in traditional outfit. That's coming up every 3 seconds in case anyone wanted to know. So that's fun. I feel like I'm just going squirrel every 3 seconds. Oh, Remington asks, am I into Star Wars books? If so, which ones? And what Orthodoxy books are you reading right now? Okay, 2 very different questions, I think. So, another opportunity for all of you to be very disappointed in me. I've never seen Star Wars nor read any Star Wars books. Again, I'll just give a pause. You can leave now without shame and never watch my videos again if that's where we're at. But no, I've actually I'm not into the books, haven't watched the movies. I was terrible with like all movies before I met Eliza, and she's slowly culturing me. But Star Wars, I have not gotten around to yet. What Orthodoxy books am I reading? So, plug. I'm reading On Social Justice by St. Basil the Great with my Patreon book club. I also have on my desk right now The Mystical Theology of the Eastern Church by Vladimir Losky. And then finally, I've been slowly working my way through Orthodox psychotherapy. And I would mess up his last name, so I'm just going to say the title of the book, Orthodox Psychotherapy. Those are the Orthodox books that I've read most recently or am in the process of reading. Looking for more questions. Ooh, that's an interesting question from Jacob Fowler. Any thoughts on looking for a potential spouse while in the journey of the right denomination to be in? Yeah. I would say that it's important that you're on the same page in terms of the how, even if not the what at the moment right now. Let me unpack that. So if you're on a journey of determining what church is right for you, what you deem to be the true church, or maybe just the truest expression of the church, depending on how you end up with this, and you are also considering getting married or you're looking for a potential spouse, I would say that while it's great if you guys have the same convictions that, hey, we're both Roman Catholic and that's where we're going to be, that's great. And I think it's wonderful to be on the same page there. But it sounds like you're in this position of kind of being in a state of flux, in a state of figuring that out. I wouldn't say that the person that you date in this situation would have to be in that same state of flux, but I think you all would want to have the same criteria for finding a church. So even if at the moment you're in different churches, which would be a different what, the how is, how would we know if this church is the true church? If you agree on that, then it can be a journey you go on together. But if you're disagreed on the how, then it's going to be difficult. Even if currently you're agreed on the same what, meaning right now you're both Pentecostals, right? But you're trying to figure it out, and maybe she's very firmly Pentecostal. But for her, it's where the Spirit leads in terms of like this intuition is where you're going to end up. And for you, it's where you're going to end up historically. That's going to cause friction. But if you both say, you know what, if we're going to look at the first century church and wherever that leads, that's where we're going to end up, then I think you're agreed on the how, and you can go through that really fruitfully. So that would be my advice. Focus on being aligned on the how, even if you're not aligned on the what right now. Sean Mitchell, I did see your question about when will I come home to Rome, and I'm delighted to know that it was a joke. I thought about reading it, and then I get so many of those that I decided not to. I appreciate you. I think we'd be friends now. Remington Stewart said, Miss Eliza, welcome back. We missed you. Agent Smith voice. I don't understand the last part of that, but I'm glad you missed her. She's wonderful. Okay, this sounds like a really interesting question. I'm going to try to wrap my head around it. If Christ is the person of the Word of God who assumed a human nature, then is the Pope the person of a Catholic cardinal who assumes the chair nature of infallibility upon being elected Pope? Okay, so I'm gonna go with no. And this would get kind of metaphysically deep, but so who assume? So this kind of has like the Pope is coming into this existing office that he wasn't in. Well, you have to be careful here. I'm not sure I understand the question, but this is a really fun thought exercise. If Christ is the person of the Word of God who assumed a human nature, so yes, eternal second person of the Trinity takes on a human nature. He's fully God, fully man, two natures, one person without division, change, confusion, or separation. That's Chalcedon, 451. So then is the Pope the person of a Catholic cardinal who assume? Okay, so I think what I'd go with here is no, because we're kind of getting into this like attribute versus yeah. So it's not like you just kind of take on this attribute without that thing fully being you, that because the Pope can take that off. I don't know. I feel like this is so tricky. That's a really interesting question, but I'm gonna say it's not quite the same. But fun question. Let me scroll back down towards more recent questions. Okay, so Banks Obar asks, what do I think about Cameron Bertuzzi's conversion to Catholicism? I did actually answer that. I think probably the most in-depth of any question I've answered here so far. Maybe I'll even clip that out to be a short little thing after this. But I already answered it, so I'm not going to answer it again. The fastest way I could say that, though, is that I applaud him for being willing and open to follow where he believes that truth leads. And I don't think it's overly helpful to make too big of a deal out of it, because having been on the other side of this, I recognize that we're all just like random dudes trying to figure this out the best we can, and putting undue pressure on any of us, I don't think it's helpful. It's not what I'd want for me. So I wish Cameron all the best. He seems like a great dude. I'd love to talk with him sometime, but if I was him, I wouldn't want people making it out to be like, therefore Catholicism is true because I decided that. And so I'm just going to try to take some of that weight off his shoulders. So someone else asked, what do I think about Cameron's conversion? So again, that's, I just answered that, or I just talked about how I answered it earlier. So be sure to check that out later. Okay. Cam Smith, how would you recommend parsing through the various traditions? I feel like I blank slated my theology after college, and it feels overwhelming. This is a really good question, and it's one that I receive often and have thought about a decent amount. So, how do you go about determining what's the true church, and how do you do that in a way that's not completely overwhelming? The difficult answer is that you want to do this in a way that gives fair weight to various traditions, I think, but doing that is really going to take time. And what's going to happen, I think, for most people is that as they go on this journey at some point, they're going to feel that this is really urgent and has to be decided right now, especially if you do so publicly. People will start to really put pressure on you, like, when are you coming home to Rome? When are you coming home to Rome? You know it's what you want to do. When are you doing it, right? But the fact of the matter is that to really dive into these things, it is not easy. And sometimes it's not really all that realistic. You'll hear people say, okay, so what you'd want to do is you want to go through the earliest church. You'll go through the first century writings, and you can do that pretty quick, right? You can get through the apostolic fathers. But honestly, in that, I don't think you're going to have enough data to say, okay, therefore Orthodoxy, therefore Catholicism. At least I didn't in my experience. Then what people will tell you is, okay, then read through to the Nicene Fathers, right? So if you're going through like Schaff's collection, it's really hard to point when you do this, but it's the red spine books over there. Go through the Nicene Fathers and then the post-Nicene Fathers. And all of a sudden, your data set is just really large. And what you're finding again is that these people weren't really writing in the 3rd, 4th, 5th century to argue Orthodoxy versus Catholicism, because that wasn't a distinction that was real at that time. So you go, oh man, now I've got to investigate the Filioque. And I think that is a fair thing to do. So you could do it that way. So basically one way is you could go through the historical splits, and then you could get to the Reformation and get to those arguments where you see splits in the church and say, who got it right here? Man, that's going to take you a lot of time. I think it's maybe one of the best ways you could do it, but not realistic for a lot of people. So what you could then do, another way of going about it, is you could go from a more experiential route. You could say, where am I going? If I seek Christ, where do I most find him? And I think there's merit in that as well. So you could spend time in an Orthodox church. You could spend time in a Catholic church and a Protestant church with just a heart to seek Christ and ask, where am I finding Christ most fully? And I think that has a lot of merit, but it also introduces some experiential bias, some of the fact that, well, maybe if you had gone to that Orthodox church down the street instead of that one, you would have had a very different experience. Or if you'd gone to that church, and again, if you start trying them all, your data set's going to get just too large. What I would recommend, and it's not a perfect answer, is to somehow combine the two. At all times, the question really isn't what church is right in isolation. It is, where is Christ most fully present? Where, if I'm seeking Christ, do I find him? And we find Christ in the church, right? That the church is his body. And so the experience should line up there, even if imperfectly. And then we also try to balance out that experiential bias with going through history. We look at the major divisions and we do our best to sort through it, recognizing that 100% certainty just isn't going to happen this side of heaven, that you're simply not going to become an expert on all of these issues. There isn't one alive that is an expert in the Filioque, in the Reformation, in the kind of Oriental Orthodox split early on. Like, you just can't become a full-on expert in all of this. And so you do your best, you do so humbly, you do so prayerfully, you seek Christ, and you live out faithfully as best as you can, recognizing that you'll never have 100% certainty. That's my advice. Okay. Matt Jackson asks, in your opinion, which one makes more sense of all the data? Oh, okay. Were you the one that asked this too? You were, and I promised that I was going to ask this at the end. So, Matt Jackson, I'm going to pull this back up actually, because this is the question I wanted to end on. So I'm just going to go through, but I will not forget your question. Any other questions? We are almost at time. I wanted to go about an hour. Any other questions? Maybe it is time for the final question. What is your view and belief of Mary after speaking with Catholics and Orthodox? Would you and or do you pray the rosary? So what is my belief of Mary after speaking with Catholics and Orthodox? It's more nuanced. I'd say I have a higher view of Mary than I did before. I would need kind of more specificity on what's my belief on Mary. I mean, she's incredible, but like what exactly, it's kind of tricky there. So I would say that Mary is the Theotokos, the God bearer, and that puts her in a unique category, right? That no one else has ever had Mary's experience. And so I think we should have some deference to that and have wonder at that and be in awe of it. But I don't pray the rosary. Would I? I'm not going to say that I've never, at least read out the words. But it's not something that's part of my prayer life. And I don't know. There's just a little bit of it just feels kind of odd. And I don't know that's entirely an intellectual hurdle. But I don't personally pray the rosary. But I'm not saying I never would. That was maybe a non-answer. Okay. From that non-answer, let's go to a final answer. So Matt Jackson asks probably the question that I get asked more than anything else. And that is, in my opinion, which one makes more sense of all the data at this point? Catholicism or Orthodoxy? Which one would I convert to if I had to pick one this week? It's a fair question, right? I mean, I've been making videos about this for the past 2 years. I've spent a lot of time thinking about these questions. Obviously, I haven't felt so strongly about this that I've become either one. So the question is only in the sense of if I had to pick right now between the two. I really struggle with this. I we'll point out a couple things that I find compelling in each, and then I'll give an answer. So with Roman Catholicism, I love the part of it in which that you can fit things into nice boxes, right? You can get answers on theological questions. There's a clear hierarchy. There's a clear structure. Like the business side of me says, okay, that's a good way to run an organization. There's good systems in place here. And I like that. I'm drawn to that in many ways. It seems like a smooth system, even if it's been an absolute mess in a lot of ways in recent years. But the structure makes sense to me in an intuitive sense. There's another part of me that a thing I like about Roman Catholicism is that it feels a bit more authentic to my own experience, which I don't even know how much I agree with that way of thinking, but insofar as like, if I went back in time far enough, my ancestors were probably Catholics, because that's just kind of the part of the world that I hail from, and they would have been Catholic. But to take on Eastern Orthodoxy would be kind of a culture that is in many ways foreign to my own. And so there is a certain kind of romance, right, to the idea of, man, my great, 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 grandfathers or whatever probably prayed the mass in this way, or they were part of this church, and in some way it would be a connection to them. And that is beautiful, and I appreciate that. On the side of Eastern Orthodoxy, there's a lot to love. I love the spiritual theology of the Eastern Church. And I know that it is present in many ways in the Eastern Catholic Church and in various parts of the Catholic tradition. But I do. I love the liturgy. Like, if I had to pick between which one I want to go to liturgy at, I'm going to pick the Eastern Orthodox Church for the most part. I can only compare my personal experiences. And they're so different. I went to St. John Cantius pretty frequently in college, which is this incredible Catholic church that is full of gold and just stunning in design and huge and draws visitors from all over. And I loved it. And I would go there just to pray and to sit and to contemplate. And it did inspire awe and wonder. And it made you feel small in the grand scheme of what God is up to. And it was humbling. But at the Orthodox church just down the street, which maybe had 50 people in it and no chairs, and you stood for the service and then you sat on rugs as the priest came out and gave the homily just in the middle of everyone. Man, there was just this glimpse of like being part of the early church. It just felt so raw and so beautiful and so simple. And rather than making you feel really small, it made you feel caught up in something that it extends beyond the boundaries of time and space, with the icons all around you and the people and the chanting and the incense. It felt like you're caught up in something otherworldly, and it's beautiful, even though it's smaller and simpler. And there's something about it that I like, in that it's a bit, and this probably is my own Protestant strand here, but there's this air to Catholicism at times of feeling kind of overly authoritarian, in that there's a longer list of things you have to subscribe to, and there's more authority checkpoints, and that's not a bad thing. Again, the system is beautiful and well designed, but it also it's easy to push back against, or to want to push back against. In Orthodoxy, there's something that feels a bit more organic, something a bit less hierarchical, which probably my Western Protestant liberal mindset, like liberal in the very most broad, not talking politically, but is drawn to, right? Like that's the intellectual tradition that we in the West are most prone to, in a way of kind of anti-hierarchy, if you will, which isn't all positive. But there's also downsides to both. So when globally there's just less, and maybe specifically because in the US you see less Orthodox Christians, for people that take that hard line, that's a really difficult one for me to toe. The Catholic Church has nuanced that more. And I do appreciate that there seems to be more ongoing development in that, where you can get more clarity, even though, again, it's been a jarbled mess recently. But you can get new definitions, or not kind of new theology, but in a way of kind of adding footnotes on things and clarifying things over time at its best. Is a good system, I think, for the Roman Catholic Church. If I had to choose today, I would probably choose Orthodoxy. Now, I don't want people to put too much weight into that. I say that primarily because I think in a lot of ways my thinking has shifted. Not entirely, but someone asked the question earlier of how do you parse out traditions? And I started this kind of exploration as very strongly facts, logic, history, like just tell me what is true. And that's where we like more on the kind of Cameron Bertuzzi Bayesian analysis side. And the longer I've gotten into it, the more it just feels really difficult to sustain that, to get enough data sets and to run them through a way and to kind of come up with a filter that isn't overly biased and to come out with just a clean answer. It just feels lacking. And as I change also my social location, if you will, right? At that time, I was a theology student in Moody. And though I was in a relationship, I'm away in Chicago by myself studying theology, just reading books 24/7. That was my whole life. Now I'm married. And what I honestly would probably put more weight on is, like, as I think about having a family, where can I go and pray? Where can I seek Christ? Where do I feel like I grow most? And because of my draw to the Orthodox liturgy, I think I would tend toward that. Again, I don't want to put too much stake in that. I don't want to say, like, this is what I would go with today. I guess that is what I'm saying. But I want to say I am going with this today. But if I had to choose, this is the first time I've ever answered this question on my channel. I think today I would choose Orthodoxy. And I'm open to that view changing. But I think it pulls on my heart a bit more than my head. And maybe I just lean more that way these days. I'm probably going to have a vulnerability hangover from answering that question. But that's what these Q&As are for. So if you've enjoyed this Q&A, let me know if you want to see more of these. Like I said at the very beginning, it's been over a year since I last did one of these. And if you would like it to not be a year until I do another one, let me know and I can make that happen. I was glad you guys got to see Eliza today. That was a treat. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thanks again to all of you. Hitting 50,000 subscribers is such a beautiful treat. It's mind-boggling, but something I'm deeply grateful for. So the channel's going to keep going. I'm going to keep doing interviews. I've got lots lined up. I'm going to keep sharing my views and opinions on things, and I'm going to share my journey of just trying to make sense of the church. I hope it's helpful for you. To all of you that have shared encouraging messages and comments along the way, whether that's stay in the live chat or any point over the last couple years, thank you so much. I do read those, and they do mean the world to me. To those of you guys that gave suggestions today, I have written them down, and I look forward to doing this again. All of my love to you all, and to all you monks and nuns out there. Open invite, Suggs apartment, come by, we'll make you sourdough bread. Until next time, everyone, be on the lookout for more videos. And as always, go out and love God and love others, because truly, above all else, that will change the world.